let's go back to where before I distracted you.
Yeah. Anyways, back to the iPad thing. It's that's disappointing. If those benchmarks that CNET did are right, I think you're right that it is just two A4s stuck together, which would honestly make you wonder then how they're getting this supposed 9 times faster graphics. Because I'm like, that doesn't. I guess they upgraded the graphics part, but not the processor.
That's what I'm assuming. Yeah, I mean they're. I think they whatever graphics chip they're upgrading to, I think is handling that. That's fine. But
that's
it certainly
worthless
gives
without
everyone else in the tablet market essentially, really now in product cycles they can one up each other, whereas Apple could have just come out of the water. But you know, again, it still depends. If the A5 is truly a Cortex 9. I really wonder why they're clocking it at a gig.
Well, and that will be interesting.
I think your audio's stalling because I hear that lag.
Is that better?
It's just rippling.
Can you hear me now?
Now it's kind of subsiding. There you go.
Okay.
Much better.
Much better. I'll stay over here. I'll stay away. It likes me better over here. If I'm over here, it's happy. It's like, so I'll stay over here.
You know, I hope CNET. I don't know what to think. I mean, there are a lot of articles coming out and talking about like poor quality of the video cameras of the iPad, and then they're said to be spoofs and.
Yeah, it's like I'm holding final judgments till next week because the thing comes out actually later today. So people will start tearing it apart this weekend. My guess is by the time we do iWorld next week, we'll have some hard data and other stuff as opposed to, oh yes, we were among the elites that were trusted to give it a good review, but we can't.
Right. Well, let's say, is the Motorola Zoom using a Cortex 9 or
the Motorola
Cortex 8?
Here's the thing: the Motorola Zoom is a gigahertz system, but there's people and applications that are overclocking it to 1.5. So my guess is what they've done is downclocked it for slightly better performance and better heat dissipation. But my guess is it really is a 9 chip. So my guess is it's not being overclocked to 1.5. It is a 1.5. It's probably been downclocked to a gig. It would be my guess because of the type of chip it is on the thing. Because you would not be able to overclock an 8 to 1.5.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, I'm looking it up. So it's an NVIDIA Tegra.
Right.
It's a Cortex A9. Okay,
right.
It is off of a Cortex A9.
And this gets confusing because the really confusing thing here is these Tegra GPU CPU chips and these A chips that Apple's making. They're the same chip.
Oh yeah, because they're all using an ARM specification.
And they're using these little. Yeah, it's like this is what's so confusing about this to the end user. It's like. It's like, well, this is our new revolutionary A chip. That's the exact same chip as this other branded chip, but it's like both of them are using the same chip, just branding it differently, which is just or the same series of
exactly.
chips.
That's ARM's brilliance. It's like saying we're not going to get in the business of physically selling chips. We're going to license out the specification and let everyone else physically make the chips. And guess what? You come out swinging. Because you have a tremendous amount of manufacturers physically making the chips, keeping the price down. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the best way to tackle Intel.
Well, no, it really is, and I see that being great going forward. But see, this is one of the reasons that makes it so surprising that when it comes to running things like HTML5, that the iPad is so underpowered and lacking at it. Because like the Nexus 1, which is basically the exact same chip ARM processor as is in the original iPad, which we think now there's 2 of them in this iPad, but we're not going to know for sure till next week, could do it, but the iPad with the exact same hardware couldn't. It's like, so I don't know if it was memory or if it was or just something. These are system-on-chip systems, so it may be some of the other components they put in there, because it's not a one-to-one thing. But it's one of those, it's just, you find it really weird that almost identical hardware is having such different performance results. It's...
Yeah, it depends. It's because the Qualcomm, the Snapdragon, obviously they're clocking at 1.2 gigahertz.
Yeah, the latest run of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those, like, you really got to be wondering there. What's going on there? And I'm not liking the lack of performance increase. That's a good thing for anybody who bought an iPad. It's not so much a good thing for Apple as a company as a whole, because what this basically means is, performance-wise, once Android and over the course of this year WebOS get their crap straightened out, everybody's going to go, why would I buy an Apple again? It's a piece of shit. I don't know if they're planning a software patch, and maybe it's just maybe there's some patch in the works to better optimize for it. Maybe this is a software error, not a hardware error. We really don't know.
It's gonna. I'm really interested to see what is the A5 indeed, because if it is a Cortex-A, then they're locked definitely in the gigahertz.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I'm hoping if it is a Cortex-A, that Apple figures out some type of software fix for it. Not because I like Apple or anything, but because there are millions of people out there with iPads. This is me thinking as a web developer. I would love to be writing more HTML5 web apps for clients. I'd like to be doing more of that. But if the iPad cannot run the JavaScript that's necessary to do that, I can't do it. So it's one of those things, I could write them all day for an Nexus 1 and all the Android phones, because for some reason they run them. But the iPad doesn't. So, and like I said, there was almost identical hardware, but one can, one not. I'm wondering if it isn't some kind of inefficiency in the way iOS is handling the architecture. That
I highly doubt that.
I'm not seeing that either. I could see a lot of things, but it's like, I'm trying to think of what it could be, because this is Unix versus Linux. It's not like they're, oh dear God, different. I'm trying to honestly understand why there is this night and day performance difference, because there isn't a logical reason for it to be. There isn't, but it is.
Yeah, I know, because I read that article. I mean, and I'm seeing that as reputable.
Yeah. So, Well, this was the same thing with like the old reviews that were citing about this too. It's one of those things. From an ecosystem standpoint, you're hoping whatever it is, Apple fixes it. Whether it's the hardware, not enough memory allocated, whether it's some oversight in the software, whatever it is, Apple fix it so that developers don't have to worry about it. Because right now, I can do neat stuff for Android, and then I have to kind of scale back for iOS so it works, so it doesn't crash the device and get buggy and slow and so on. And that's a lot of extra work just to cater to the Apple product. I'll do it, but it's one of those things, twice the work, twice the bill, twice the...
Yeah. It's so... I don't know what to call it. I don't really...
It's an anomalous problem.
It would make sense because, Lord, is Apple going to come out with the A6 next year and say, well, now this is the Cortex A9, or is it going to... is ARM going to come out with another specification that's even faster? And just Apple decided to make it a dual Cortex A.
Well, and here's the other.
Wow,
here's the other thing to consider there. Apple likes to just do this wow factor as a company. What they may have decided is, no matter what we do, this is going to be the year of Android and WebOS. So what we need to do is wait, because there's quad-core ARMs coming out. Mm-hmm. And Apple may just have decided, you know what, we're not going to get into this, we're just going to increase our profit margin per unit by using old stuff, because we think we're going to sell less of them. And then in the iPad 3, when the quad cores are available, we'll just skip over. That may be their plan. I don't know, because
I wonder, it's really kind of see, because we're still kind of in the wave is still kind of, well, I think it's probably about to crest on this tablet thing. Is it going to really be a fad, or is it really going to hold on to the market? You know, I think the iPod held on, and it's because it was so unique. You know, it did what it was designed to do extremely well, and Apple backed it up with one of, well, now the largest digital music library industry logistics chain known to man, and thus breathed life into it. This, Apple doesn't have that much control over, because it's not a specific market. They've got an e-reader, they've got applications, it can do any number of things. It's not like this target specific where, oh yeah, hey, our next iPod, we can add video to it, and that's kind of like, hey,
well, no, it's like,
and adding it on to music, well, yeah, we can do it, but the iPad is just so versatile, or, you know, this inherently
and you make fun of iAds all the time, and iAds is something that should be made fun of. But the reality is that is one aspect I have to give Apple for it to give credit. Now, I don't think they're ever going to be able to do it the way they imagine. The reality is the ship for Apple to control that advertising set sail a long time ago. It's just, I'm sorry, it's probably going to be dominated by Google or somebody who completely revolutionizes advertising. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be Google controlled, but if it's not going to be Google controlled, it's going to take some little yuppie upstart coming in and going, we're going to do advertising in a way it's never been done before that caters perfectly to this, and caters so the advertising is just fun. Basically everything Apple wants iAds to be, but in a way that is completely platform agnostic and just kind of goes and lets people do whatever the hell they want, but somehow this works. You know, if you're a genius who can figure that out, you're going to be a billionaire. Because that's
and quite honestly, let's say this is a fad, then Apple won big. You know, if this is a fad and something ends within maybe another year and a half,
well,
and, it finds a happy plateau at very few units sold, Apple's left.
Well, but see, that's what I'm getting at. Whether or not this is a fad is, you know, just like, you know, think back in the day, oh, television's just a fad. Radio's cheaper, it's faster, it's not. What ultimately did it was eventually people started putting entertaining commercials on. It's like where the visual element was something, oh, well, I have to have this visual element. It's like, and that was what's made TV be TV. You know, until that occurred, it was a fad. So at the end of the day, whether tablets are a fad or the future of computing and the next PC, as Steve Jobs put it, has to do with, can developers adapt fully to this form factor, which is something they failed to do twice in the past, and can it be given away and monetized? You know, basically, can we get the advertising right in a way that, while it isn't perfect, it's something you don't mind? And those are the two factors ultimately, not the innovation, not the sun. And the biggest holdup, unfortunately, to that happening right now is the cell phone carriers. What they're charging for data and everything is basically handicapping those things happening. You know, the really innovative stuff like remote controlling your desktop from anywhere on the planet via your tablet and in a interface that makes sense, does all these things, they're going to be data intensive. And I'm not saying they should break their bone. I'm not saying they need to be giving everybody, you know, 5 megabits down. You know, but realistically, you could do a hell of a lot on these devices with 512 plus, I want to say, was it 768? Yeah, it was 768 down and 512 up, unmetered. You could do a shitload on these things. Like, it's like we don't need, oh dear God, internet connections on these things. We just need fast enough to have them be the relay interfaces that they so want to be. But data caps is keeping people from doing that. And I'm sorry, but if I'm paying by the gigabyte, I'm gonna I'm going to throw stink at the fact that I have to watch a commercial, no matter how pretty it is, every time I saw it, because I just watched half a gig go away.
That's right. I know.
So, I don't mind so much if it's unmetered. Not unlimited, unmetered. That's the key difference there. So, unfortunately, I think it might turn into a fad because of this war on we don't want tablets and smartphones. We don't want tablets and smartphones. It's like so. And anyways, why the fad's still around? Any ideas on what the hell the iPhone 5's gonna be, or even if there's gonna be one this year?
Well,
I've heard a lot of what I would consider a fanboy wish list rumors, but nothing I'd give credence to.
Well, let's see something. When did the iPhone 4 came out? Was it last? June, something like that?
I want to say the announcement was in June, and then it came out in July or something like that.
July. And let's see.
I mean, we're due. We're due for one in a month or two. But there's a lot of questions on whether or not that's going to happen now, because Verizon just got the iPhone 4. There's no
Let's find it. Let's see. The iPhone gets released in the summer of 2007, then 3G is in summer of 2008, 3GS in summer of 2009, iPhone 4 summer 2010, right. iPhone 5 2011. So
yeah, it's we're due. It's just one of those. They just screwed everybody with the iPads. Do they really want to screw everybody about Verizon iPhone 4s? But this is the one thing. People are like, should I buy a Verizon?
I don't think they're getting screwed. Look, it was. I think that had to do more with policy and when they were able to get it out without barking up AT&T's tree.
Well, yeah, there's that. But what it's going to depend on is what the iPhone 5 is. If I had to guess, I would guess the iPhone 5 would get the A5.
Yes, it would. So yes, it will be dual core.
Yeah, it'll be dual core. It'll get the RAM upgrade, obviously.
512.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think. What else would they do? They're not going to up the resolution.
No, the iPhone 5 will probably, people say a redesign, getting away from the glass kind of thing, so that they could bring back a white, like you've been always harping on a white iPhone.
Well, they said there was going to be one. That's the only reason I'm humping on them. I don't like white products, but it's one of those things Apple people
I don't either. I don't like white products.
And they said there was going to be one. Honestly, the only rumor that's made any sense whatsoever for the iPhone 5 would be the idea that they might do a minor redesign, and that it'll basically be an iPhone 4, but it'll be bigger. It'll be like...
Yeah, there are things talking about these Taiwanese manufacturers are literally saying they're suggesting a 4-inch screen.
Yeah, which that sounds like, well, why would they make such a solid size? Basically, it'd make it the size of the larger Android phones, is what it would be. And I'm like, that does make sense, because it's 180 from what, Apple's always about. Here's what I see it being. I see it somehow being bigger, but thinner.
Yeah, probably, it'll... but I honestly feel that this iPhone 5 will be driven by the software. In other words, I'm actually excited. iOS 5 could blow me out of the water and then really make me rethink everything if it's that good. But they better address everything that I'm expecting.
Little things like have more than one navigation menu, actually have a desktop on the device. Little things like this.
Yeah, you better have awesome notifications. Essentially, I'm asking for them to really. They won't do it, but they need a new way to navigate everything. I'm tired of icon pages and stuff. By using even Android, and I'm not that big of an Android thing, as I still think it's clunky in many regards, but I can navigate faster on Android than
but see,
iOS.
part of the reason you can do that on Android is because, for all intents and purposes, it has 3 menus. You have the desktop, you have your applications list, and then you have that notifications thing.
Right.
Well,
and those little gadgets or widgets, whatever you want to call them, when they come on, I think are very useful.
That's the thing I find most surprising about this. The Linux, Android widgets, Apple, no widgets. It's one of those. What planet am I on? It's like.
Well, Apple's desktop. I mean, OS X has the whole. What is that thing? What do they call them? Gadgets? I forget. Yeah. People don't program to them anymore.
Yeah, I know, but it's one of those things. There was this
widgets. They're called widgets.
They're called widgets. Windows
widgets are essentially like little iPhone applications. You have a hotkey now on your keyboard. Yeah. For OS X, and bam, all the widgets come up. It's kind of the widgets essentially are application grade, mobile application grade type little things, But you don't have that on iOS. So.
No, it's one of those you honestly wonder what were they thinking. I don't say they need to copy Android. In fact, I kind of wish they wouldn't, because I kind of felt with iPhone 4 like that's what they were doing. There was a lot of this. Wow, that just seems like such a bad ripoff of something Android's doing.
Well, I would say Android got the best of OS X with the widgets. I mean, and then of course Windows 7
I'm gonna do fighting words on there, because almost every single widget and thing you see in Android has been on Linux for years. Some of them have been on Linux longer than they've been on OS X. So
you want
to be careful there.
Windows can claim all, I think, because they were They were the first, I think, under someone had came up and showed it under what was it?
Well, if you're going to go back,
something like that, or something like that.
If you're going to go back to if you're going to go back to that, you can actually make an argument that indirectly widgets got their start in Windows 3, because there were a lot of applications in Windows 3 that, while they weren't actual widgets, they weren't resizable. They basically were this fixed size, and they sat on the screen in this area, so they were like a widget that didn't stay on your desktop. But as long as you had your other windows on top of them, they were very widget-ish.
Right.
So
what would be cool, I think, is that iOS 5 used the dock as in some way of making it smoother to put more on there, but also like a launcher.
Well,
from the dock, that you could have several launch groups from it.
Here's the thing. I honestly think that Apple wants to put a dock on iOS. I think they want to. I think they can't figure out a way to make it an intuitive navigation.
Well, they've got a dock. I mean, it's called a dock now on iOS, but it can only hold 4 icons.
Well, no, but see, that's the thing. One of the reasons the dock works so well on OS X.
Yeah, I love the dock.
Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the dock, but I get the appeal of it. One of the reasons it works so well, that fisheye menu navigation works, is because you have enough screen real estate for the average user to put what you need, your things at the top of a hat. And if you're using that fisheye thing where you hover down and they get bigger, there's room for it to grow and shrink. There's actually enough real estate for that. On things like the iPhone, there ain't. Which means you have to create a whole new dock that's just like the dock everybody knows, loves, and is used to, but in a way that will work with something that doesn't have a mouse. Because for all intents and purposes, a touchscreen doesn't have a mouse. You don't interact with the touchscreen by sticking your finger in the center and then dragging it down and going over. Your
finger is not a mouse.
Your finger's not a mouse. Basically, you're pushing virtual buttons, which is not how a dock works. It's one of those things. I think Apple does desperately want to put a dock in iOS, but they can't figure out how to make it work elegantly with a touchscreen. And I sympathize for them, because I write fisheye menus all the time for people on web pages, and it's one of those things I advise them. You should keep this as far away from your mobile version of your site as possible, because it just ain't going to work with a touchscreen. Because it doesn't. It's one of those things. It works perfectly with a mouse. It will never work with a touchscreen. You have to re-engineer the thing from scratch while simultaneously keeping it familiar. That's one hell of a design problem. And, you know, it's... I think that's what they want. They just can't figure out how to do it. And it's something, honestly, people have been trying to figure out how to do for about the last decade. Like, if I could just make this work with this interface. It's like...
Well, iOS, for me, needs a major UI overhaul, or a major additions to it, or complements to it, however people want to word it, to get me interested in it again. But I have a feeling that the iPhone 5 is going to be heavily driven by the features that iOS 5 is going to deliver.
You're hoping.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're almost saying, without saying it and desperately not wanting to say it, that if Apple doesn't hit a home run with iOS 5 and just reimagine it while keeping it familiar, that it's kind of the beginning of the end for iOS.
Well, for me at least. I mean, it's, you know, if they are unable to really attract me with what they're going to come up with, because everybody was so excited, and everybody said, "See, shut up! Now iOS has multitasking."
Well, let's see.
I was laughing my ass off. I was like, "You call that multitasking?"
That was the big problem with iOS 4. iOS 4, it was very clear that Apple was coming up and making this big announcement about, you know that line everybody crossed last year? We can see it now. That was basically what they came up and announced, and it was just, Apple, you're supposed to, you know, go at least catch up with everybody else. Not go, we can see where everybody else is.
Yeah, it was an afterthought. I mean, it was clearly shown to be an afterthought in how they implemented it.
Yeah, well, and hopefully it was, what sounds like what you're saying is, hopefully for Apple's sake, it was an afterthought that basically they're doing classic Apple. Well, we're going to release this and say it's magical, but the reality is we know we're boned, so behind the scenes we're frantically working to actually solve the actual problem.
We didn't have enough time to do this much rewriting.
Well, no, because like you're saying,
make it for 5.
to actually address those problems is a complete redesign, and like it or not, that is about a year project on something like that. That's not a, oh, well, let's just
But see, let me tell you something that scares me, though. Is that Leopard was harmed by programmers going to the iPhone, okay? And Apple had admitted to that, pulling programmers from Leopard to work on the iPhone. Now, was 10 Lions releasing, and are they playing the same game of, wow, we need some programmers from Lion to help out
you're wondering if this isn't
the iOS redesign? Or are we going to really try to dedicate to Lion and then be short on developers on that end?
So it sounds like you're getting back to this, like, you know, even though they in some respects, even though they are a multi-billion-dollar small company, Apple is a small company with finite resources. And
well, no, they choose to be lean, which I agree, versus Microsoft, which is like bureaucracy versus democracy.
Well, okay, but see, I would argue a hybrid of the two is better. Like in situations like this, would it really be so bad for Apple to use some of those cash reserves to do both at the same time? You know, I'm just saying. Would that be such a horrible thing? Or is it that they don't trust bringing new developers in for a few years to solve these problems, knowing that they may not have permanent jobs?
I don't know. I mean, I can even pretend to know how they choose to do the logistics of labor and which department or what project they're going to be on. But I just do know that history has shown that they pulled the developers from one project and moved into another. I don't know if that's going to happen now. Maybe that's not even an issue. I'm just saying that I have history. I know what has happened. I know they're going to deliver an iOS 5. I know that they're releasing OS 10 Lion, and I know another point that you're asking in the show notes is when. If not by WWDC for a late summer, it'll be an early fall release, similar to like Leopard.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'd guess too. I would guess Lion would be out October at the latest.
So where I don't know. I'm just hoping for the best. I really would love to see iOS just make a rebound. They blow me away.
Okay.
I just have a feeling it won't happen, but we'll see.
He's like, I hope. Ah, crap.
Yeah, exactly. Because if it doesn't, Palm has already won my sale anyway. I mean, I obviously own a Palm Pre, but for the tablets, I'm really trying to keep my options open, trying to make, because my next investment will be a new phone alongside with the tablet, because to me it's they're one and the same, and the tablet's the extension of the phone for me. Okay. So I'm even looking at BlackBerry. I'm looking at everyone.
Well, no, and honestly, I think that's a good position to be taking right now, especially on the tablets, because the reality is, everybody's going to be throwing anything and seeing what sticks this summer. You know, if you can just stand back and let the summer fireworks go, and then into summer go, okay, who's not burned to death? I'll take that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. What do you think about the idea that Apple's basically copying Hewlett-Packard and putting these pop-up stores in areas?
I don't know. Why do we want to say that's copying? I've seen pop-up. I mean, good Lord, I've seen fashion boutiques doing pop-ups and.
Oh no! I mean, it's one of those things historically Apple hasn't done, and a lot of other places have, and it's one of those. Okay, it's not like they're copying anyone in particular. Yeah, it's a logical thing to do. It's one of those things. It's just, I'm surprised that this is getting blogged about and that it's news and that it's not, because it's one of those things. It's like, really, Apple's creating these little areas for.
Well, the tech market seems to be having a closer eye on Apple. They're known, and then let's face it, they've been extremely successful in branding their retail stores, so much so that we've seen Microsoft launch, we've seen Sony do rebranding and making it Apple-esque.
And don't take this the wrong way, but I think Microsoft completely missed the point of an Apple store with the Microsoft Store, because it's not that it's an Apple store, it's that it's an Apple store, so Apple has complete control of their distribution system from start to finish, which allows them to do some things other people and most of their competition can't do.
Well, they are, if I may say, heavily outside the retail outlets. I mean, all the way from Walmart to a tremendous amount of online stores now that sell at least their mobile division. I mean, it's extremely ubiquitous. Walmart sells iPads, iPhones. Best Buy now sells.
I'm not saying they have. It's one of the few areas in which Apple doesn't have draconian control.
Right.
But
don't you find it interesting that they deem it okay to sell iPads and iPhones in a Walmart, but not yet Apple desktops? I find that to be interesting.
Well, here's the thing. I think part of that has to do with the price thing and other stuff. In that.
Well, would that price be any different than they're doing with the iPhone?
Well, but here's the thing. It's not. I don't know if you've ever shopped in the electronics section of a Walmart. I try not to.
I've been there. I mean, yeah.
Okay, but if you go there, it's like you get to the MP3 players and the cameras, and you have up to $500-800 things. But if you've ever gone and looked at the computer section in Walmart, it's nothing but the cheapy $300 machines. Cheapest of the cheapest computers. Apple doesn't make anything in this league, and basically, I don't think it's sell. It might sell, but I don't think Walmart wants it. It's one of those things. Walmart has these things they want to stock.
Yes.
And it's like I think they're like, well, of course we want to stock the iPhone and the iPad, but a computer. We have $300 computers, but this isn't a $300
Yeah,
computer.
I point well taken, I think. Yeah, but I'll say that their mobile division and iPods and all that are as ubiquitous as they are because of just about they're sold almost everywhere now.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's a good thing for the end user.